The Find Your True North podcast and blog are dedicated to exploring intuition and how we use it in our businesses and lives. Together, we'll learn how to sharpen our intuition to make our daily decision-making easier. We'll find out how to hear the language of intuition, and we'll learn how to remove the emotional, mental, and physical barriers we might have to hearing it. Today we'll be talking to Rachel Rodgers. Rachel is a business lawyer turned business coach, intellectual property strategist, creator of Small Business Bodyguard, and all-around badass. Today, she'll be sharing her thoughts on intuition, including how water helps her clear her mind and make better decisions, how input and opinions from other people can sometimes interfere with her own inner voice, and how she combats that, the big risks she took on one intuitive hunch, and how she uses her body compass to make decisions to get better outcomes for herself. For more information about the Find Your True North podcast, go to www.intuition.today. And now, enjoy the episode. Let's talk about intuition, and let's start with your personal definition of intuition.
Interesting. Okay. So my personal definition, I guess the way I define intuition is to feel, called to do. You know, like that's how I make a lot of my decisions in business and in life, is just I feel compelled to move in a certain direction. And so I do. So I think that's intuition, or at least that's how I define it.
And then getting further into that feeling of compel, how does that show up for you? Is it in your mind? Is it in your body? Is it in your heart? Like, where does that happen? And what does it
I think all of the above. Okay. And I think it's mostly like I look for physiological responses more so than what's in my head, because I think, what's in your head is so influenced by the people around you, the media that you're consuming, your own crap, that you're bringing to any decision. Like, am I enough? Can I actually accomplish this? Who am I to do this? Those kinds of questions that I think everyone asks themselves. We all have those areas where we feel inadequate, So I don't want those things to rule me. And so I tend to use my physiological responses. So if I have an idea about something, I sort of try to picture myself actually doing it. Like, what would that feel like? So I recently did a retreat in France, called Made in France. So when I was about that idea, as soon as I got the idea, my heart starts beating fast. I just start getting this really excited feeling, and there's just this fluttery feeling, and so I'm like, ooh, this is it, Danielle Laporte, in her book, The Fire Starter Sessions, she has a line in there that I still remember. I remember I used to go to Barnes and Noble and read that book when my daughter was first born. My husband, there would be a period of time where she was sleeping and I was breastfeeding. So I was to my kid at all times. And so there was a period in the evening where she slept for a longer stretch where I would sneak off to Barnes and Noble and Fire Starter Session. And I remember sitting in Barnes and Noble, and there's one section where she talks about getting a feeling. And she says the feeling is makes you want to roll around naked singing rock opera. She's that feeling. And I was like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. So now I kind of refer to it as the naked rock opera feeling. If I get that feeling, then I know that's something that I need to move with, and do. And then if I don't get that feeling, or if it's not sustained, maybe I get excited initially, and then I'm kind of maybe not, then sometimes, I might not do it. But for the most, when I get that feeling, it's usually, all the way. So I usually will follow it.
Wow, naked rock opera. I really like that.
It totally those words totally capture the feeling, know what she's talking about.
So is that something that happens frequently for you? Okay, for example, my partner has ideas all the time and he will get excited about every idea he has. But his works differently. He has to almost weed through everything that gets him excited, because not all of them are actually good ideas. So how often do you get the naked rock opera feeling?
I think I get it probably often enough, pretty much if you take a look at my business and see like what I'm launching, then you can kind of follow the naked rock opera feeling, because it's almost because I got that feeling, and that's why I launched the thing, and that's not always true. Like, there are things that I create out of obligation, or there's things that I create because I feel like this is what my audience is asking for, or I feel like, oh, it's a good enough idea. And then almost always it doesn't last, So I almost like a requirement for me to do something it's big. Like, if it requires a big investment in making it happen, of time, money, whatever, then I have to have that feeling. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to do it, So that's, and I think I get it fairly often. And I think I have a similar problem to your partner, in that sometimes you have all of these ideas. I personally think all my ideas are brilliant, but but then it becomes an execution problem. Like, how many brilliant ideas can you actually execute well,
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I've had all these different ideas, and this has been a transitional year for me. So I'm looking back at all the things that I've created and figuring out which ones are like my long-term babies that I'm going to stick with, and then which ones were fun to try, fun to experience. I needed to learn something from that experience, and now I'm moving on to other things,
Yeah.
Or I can cut it out off of my list, things to do, which is very long.
Yeah. That makes sense. So do you have a corresponding feeling that tells you when it's a no, or is it the absence of the rock opera feeling?
Sometimes it's the absence of a rock opera feeling. Like, some things I think are really good ideas and very, usually it bums me out when it's a very lucrative idea, where I know it's like, that would be such an easy way to make a ton of money,
Yeah.
But then I'm like, I'm not feeling it, So because I know it's probably something that, maybe it can make me a lot of money, but it would make me miserable. And for me, the reason why I started my business is because I want to do work that I love, that I feel is meaningful, and make money at the same time. So I think that, yes, there's brilliant ideas out there where I could be making probably more than I'm making now. But for me, it's a requirement that I actually love it, and love going up to work every day,
Yeah.
So I won't do those things, but I do have a feeling. So there's sometimes it's the absence of the feeling, like, that's a good idea, but I'm not feeling it, so I'm not going to do it. And then there are other times where, when I really just sit and think about it, like, if I allow myself to picture myself delivering that service, or actually, what does that look like? What is that going to feel like trying it on mentally, And then I get this heavy feeling where it just feels real heavy in my shoulders, like I have bricks on my shoulders. That's the feeling that I get. And then sometimes there's like this pit in my stomach if it's a really bad idea. But usually it's just kind of like the bricks on my shoulders kind of feeling, like, that ain't it, Whereas like the rock opera feeling is very tingly and excited, and like, so it's like a stark contrast. So that feeling, I just got that recently for an idea I was planning on moving forward with. And then it was just like, no, my body was just telling me, nope, don't do it. And I have found, like, when I don't listen to that, it doesn't work out. It never works out as well as I want it to. And part of the reason is because I'm kind of committed. It's hard for me to be all the way committed when I'm not super into it. And also, even as a person, when you're selling something, if you're not feeling it, if you don't really truly believe in it and love it, it's very hard to sell, So I think the people who struggle with selling are people who just don't believe in the thing that they're selling. If you love something so much, you can't wait to tell people about it,
Yeah.
And you want to have people sign up for your thing. You have no qualms about taking their money because you really believe in the power of the thing that you're. So I feel like it really permeates everything if I don't love it, so I won't do it.
So how do you, let me think about how to phrase this question. If you started a project where you weren't quite in line with it in the first place, do you continue with it, or how do you cut it off?
I'm pretty quick to burn things down. And obviously, like, if I've accepted money or committed to something to show up on a particular day, or to deliver a service, and I'm not feeling it, and I realize that was a mistake, I'm going to deliver it because it's an integrity issue, So I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, but I'm going to make sure that never happens again, So whenever, and that's just like a general rule for my life, like whenever I have a day where I look at my calendar and I'm like, oh shit, today's going to suck. Or I actually do the day and then I'm like, God, that sucked. I just want to like go eat ice cream and like watch hours of television to like get it out of my system. I want to make sure that day, you know, so I'm like constantly adjusting my calendar rules. I drive people crazy because I'm like, we don't do telesummits. I hate telesummits. Never sign me up for another telesummit or whatever it is, you know, that drives me nuts. Like you know, or like, I'll be like I can do 3, you know, calls with clients a day. And then I'm like, okay, that was way too intense and exhausting. Only 2, you know, so I'm like constantly adjusting my, you know, calendar rules to like reflect that so that because life is made up of your days. And so I don't want my day to feel shitty. And so if I have a shitty day, I try to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And so likewise, if I sell a service and it's like such a bummer to deliver that service, then I'm going to never sell that service again. You know, I'm just like, I go on my website and like literally take the sales page down. Yeah. I can't say I'm always super fast to do it. I usually am, but sometimes like if it's a financial issue and it's like, you know, we can't afford to just burn it down right now, then I'll just put a plan in motion to slowly burn it down and build up something else that can replace it.
Got it. So how long have you been aware of your own intuitive response around this stuff?
You know, I think I've been really aware of it in the last like probably 2 years, but I think I've always kind of done it this way. It just wasn't as clear that I was doing it this way. So it wasn't as intentional. Like now, like just the other day, the exercise that I use it's called body compass exercise from Martha Beck. Okay. And I've done Martha Beck coach training, but even before that, I read her book, Finding Your Own North Star, where she talks about the body compass. And it's all about evaluating your physiological responses to, you know, the things on your to-do list, you know, or to ideas. And use that as a tool to help you figure out like what you want to do with your life. And it's really about being in a place of transition and figuring out what's next for you. But that's a great way. It's a great tool to make decisions. And like right now I'm in the planning phase of, you know, the next year of my business. And so I used that just the other day because I have these different ideas for what I want to do, and my ideas then I can actually execute well. So something has to go. And I had trouble looking at it and saying which things should go. But then I was like, oh yeah, let me go back to my body compass instead of spinning my wheels, because I do still do that sometimes. And when I did that, I was really surprised because the thing that I thought that I really wanted to do, I totally had that heavy feeling. And I was like, oh shit. And the thing that I was like, I'm kind of excited about this, but I'm not sure I should be excited about it. Like I was questioning my excitement. And that was like, got the highest score. So that's, I'm going to move on. So yeah, I use it. But I think it's like, it's one piece of information. Like it doesn't have to rule every single decision you make, but it's a piece of information that you can use to make decisions. I know my body compass is saying do this, but I know I need to make, you know, another $10,000 before the end of the month. So I'm going to do that just to make that 10,000. I know it's going to suck, but I'm going into it with my eyes open that I'm doing it for a purpose. And then I'm going to create a situation where I don't have to be in that position again, you know? So I feel like it's one piece of information that you can use to help you make decisions.
Okay, so I want to come back to like the one piece of information for decision making. So let's try to remember that. Briefly tell me a little bit about the body compass exercise that you do.
Yeah. So what you do is you start off by like sort of like closing your eyes, breathing, and then you hold in your mind a memory that's like one of the worst things that's ever happened to you. Maybe it's the worst thing, because for some people it's kind of traumatic and then to bring you out of that, you know, but like something that was pretty shitty, you know. And so you go back to that memory, imagine yourself there, like imagine what it felt like to be there. And then you do a body scan and see what are the physiological responses you're getting in your body. So like you kind of think about, okay, how are my toes feeling? My calves feeling? How are my knees feeling? How are my legs feeling? What does it feel like in my stomach? How does my shoulders feel? How does my chest feel? You know, and you just kind of scan your whole body and just note the way that it feels in your body. And like you have to like some people will say, well, I just feel sad. And it's like, no, that's not a physical feeling. It has to be physical, So some people say tingling. A friend of mine, she gets sweaty feet whenever she gets an idea that she's really excited about. Everybody has different things, but you kind of write them down. And then you do the same thing, but with a really positive experience. So for like anybody who's a mom, it's always like, oh, when my child was born, because that is such a that's what I think of. So you just think of whatever was like an amazing experience, like one of the best experiences of your life. And you, again, picture yourself there and you hold, and then you do another body scan and see what kind of responses are you getting, and you write that down. And then you have a body compass. So then like when I'm loving something, these are the kinds of feelings that I get in my body. And when I'm hating something, these are the kind of feelings I'm getting in my body, right? And of course, not everything is going to be that obvious. So sometimes certain things are neutral, where like I don't hate it, I don't kind of care, Some things are going to be, the worst thing, and some things are going to be, well, I'm getting that heaviness, but it's not like, don't do it. It's not like that heavy. It's not a 10. And so that's what you do. So when you have that body compass, then you just like, if you've got a list of decisions or even a list of things on your to-do list, then you evaluate them based on that body compass. All right. So I have to have these calls with these clients. How do I feel about that? And you just kind of, know how your body's feeling. And then you she has like sort of a chart where it's like 10, worst feeling, and then, negative 10, and then positive 10 is like the best feeling. And so you kind of just mark it on there. Then is it a negative 2? Is it a 0? And then you evaluate things based on that. And that kind of gives you information to use to make decisions. So it's like one of my favorites. I'll tell you a quick story. My favorite story about this it's not a client of mine, it's a client of a friend of mine. She had a client who was struggling with deciding at his current job at a big corporation or go to like a rival corporation where they were offering more money. And he could not decide. Like he was racking his brain for 2 weeks and it was driving him insane because he couldn't decision. And so she said, why don't you just go to like the corporate campus, drive around there and just like picture yourself there and just see what happens, see what information you get. So he goes there, drives around the parking lot a little bit, and 5 minutes into it, he has to open his door and he throws up out the door. So that's a pretty strong response. It's not always that obvious, but I think that's a great way to illustrate, the body compass. Yeah. Your body is going to tell you whether it's a good idea or not, I feel like, but you have to be in tune to it and pay attention.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great story. That's also a very extreme story. If only we were all so clear like that.
I know, I wish.
Do I like this? Blah.
That's a no.
Okay, back to something you said, or we're talking about decision making, and it's one tool. So how do you reconcile when your intuition or your body is saying one thing, but your analytical, logical side, which is strong since you're an attorney, is saying something completely different? How do you reconcile the two different sides of the brain?
Yeah, I almost always intuition wins, pretty much always. And analytical only wins when I feel like it's a requirement. Like I mentioned, it's an issue, we need the money, or there's some greater goal down the line that I'm willing to suffer for a little bit, in terms of something or doing a project or taking on a client or whatever it is. There has to be a good enough reason for me to ignore my intuition or to not go with it, But as a general rule, I usually trust it. And I feel like it usually takes care of me, I've turned down clients purely based on, I turned down this one really big client. I found out she was a neighbor of mine. I knew about her online and then realized, holy crap, I walked by her office one day and was like, wait a minute, is that this person? And then I went on the website and I was like, oh my God, it totally is. She lives right in my neighborhood. And she seemed like a really, she was super successful and somebody that I would totally want to connect with. And I had the opportunity to connect with her in person because she was right in my neighborhood. And then we wound up connecting like on Facebook or whatever. And eventually she came to me and wanted to become a client. And this would have been this is exactly what happened, you know? But she had an interaction, wasn't even with me, it was with somebody on my team who picked up the phone and talked to her. And I was like, nope, not going to work. Because I just knew it was going to be a problem. And I had to tell her that too, because she really wanted to work with us. And I kind of said, well, I recommend, you know, this other provider. They might be, you know, more suited to what you're looking for. And she was insistent that, no, she wanted to work with us. And I finally had to tell her, well, I don't think you're going to be satisfied with our services because I don't think we're a good fit, you know. And she was very offended by that. Wow. But I was like, oh, well, you know. And then it turned out that like her kid actually went to the same school as my kid. And there were some issues there between our kids. And I was like, thank you, God, that I did not take this client. Because it could have definitely turned into something that would have been even more of a disaster.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to turn down good money, you know, or a really great client who's going to bring you work and similar clients, especially if there's prestige involved, you know, you get a testimonial from them, put it up, and then it brings in all these other clients. So there's a lot of benefits, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to do it.
Wow. So
yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say I pretty much let my intuition rule in most cases.
So did it take work for that level? Because I think a lot of people are used to relying on the analytical side, the logical side of the brain. And so when the information conflicts, they're used to letting the analytical side run the show. And I've found for me that it takes a lot of conscious effort to tune into intuition, evaluate both sides, and then make that decision. So yeah. I'm always impressed when I hear someone who's like, I'm able to let my intuition rule most of the time. Is that always something that came naturally to you, or is it just in the last 2 years that you've been able to do that?
I do think that is something that I've always kind of done naturally. But definitely, you know, becoming an entrepreneur and having the plethora of decisions that you have to make, it can be very overwhelming. So it's like you need a strategy. And that became like, I think, the natural strategy. It's like, why are you doing that? Because I want to. You know, like, why aren't you doing that? Because I don't want to, you know? That kind of became the trend. Like when I was able to just make decisions for myself and, you know, run the show, then I was able to allow that to rule more than in any other setting that I was in, you know? And also I just didn't have the amount of decisions to make. If I was an employee, I had somebody else telling me what to do all day, you know, the general rule. So anyway, yeah, I think it was something that was always just kind of natural for me. And it's interesting because I kind of see it in my daughter. And it almost I feel like sometimes it kind of manifests as just being really selfish. Like, I want to do this, so that's what I'm doing, and I don't care what the consequences are. And I don't think it's exactly that, but I think that sort of what appears as selfishness can sometimes be someone just realizing that, like, their intuition is telling them to do something, and so they follow it. Mm-hmm. You know? So I'm not sure. I think it's an interesting discussion. Like seeing it in children, you know, and like, how do we develop it? I think that's interesting, but I feel like it's probably natural for all of us. And we've just had the world that we've, you know, been educated through and going to work and like all these limitations put on us. It's us from trusting it, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that, I think especially children are very intuitive, but when they say what they're feeling, they may not communicate it very well, or it may not make sense to adults, and then they're not supported in that intuitive experience, and they just learn to let it go. And I really do think it's a muscle that if you're not working on paying attention to it, it's slipping away.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I mean, even like the decision to go to law school, it was all like all the major decisions, if I looked at the major decisions in my life, all of those were made based on like emotion. It was all based on a feeling, Like I feel like this is going to turn out well, so I'm going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
from, choosing my husband to choosing to go to law school. Because there was a time where, like, I was growing up, I was always planning to be a lawyer. Then I went to college, and then I was like, actually, I don't want to be a lawyer. And so I was pursuing other things. And then I remember I was like in a parking lot in California. I think I was like at my friend's house or something, walking in my car, and I'm like, I should go to law school, and I kind of got back on that plan. And it was like really quick. I had the idea. I started thinking about it for a couple of days. And then before I knew it, I was like, yep, I'm on that track again. So yeah, I think all the major decisions I've just definitely made that way. I'm sure there was a lot of small ones I totally didn't make that way, like dating people who were like a shit show, you know what I mean? That I knew from the beginning that I dated them anyway.
I think that's everyone does that. I think we all have our shit show
Yeah.
boyfriends.
Exactly. Shit show jobs. Like, yeah, there's always some of those.
It's like a rite of passage.
Exactly.
So you talked about seeing it in your daughter. How do you talk to your daughter about it, or do you just watch it? Like, is there something you're doing to help her lean into her intuition?
I don't know if I really am. I mean, I don't know that I'm being that intentional about it, but I do ask her. Like, I definitely inquire of my kids, like, like if, for example, they just started a new school. I personally love the school. I think it's amazing, but I want to make sure that they're happy there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll say, like, how does it feel when you're at school? What do you like about school? And I kind of just pay attention to what they're talking about, and like, especially feelings. Because I think that's huge. And that's how I knew that they loved it there. And then we had like a new babysitter recently, just a week, and I wasn't feeling her at all. And, I was kind of like in a situation where I was working from home anyway. So it was like I supervise, but, like I wanted to see what their response was to her. And so like I just ask them questions and see like what kind of words they're using, about what level of enthusiasm do they have for her, because they pretty much like every babysitter because they just think it's cool to hang out with like a younger adult, or whatever. But I wanted to really, so some and things like that. It's where I've used my intuition with my daughter, especially, is ever since she started walking when she was 7 months, which is friggin' insane.
Wow.
And then she was like walking, and then by 9 months, sorry, was it crawling? I think it was crawling at 7 months and walking by 9 months. Anyway, I forget, but it was really early for her to be walking. And it was like the moment she could pull herself up and like stand, she was dancing, she was like constantly dancing. And then I noticed as she got older and like was walking with more, certainty, she was dancing all the time and would fall over trying to dance before she even was like really sturdy in her walking. So I just knew that she was really into dancing. And so I put her into a dance program from when she was like 4 years old, and the best one that I could find. Mm-hmm. And she went to Alvin Ailey, which was the first year, and that's one of the best dance schools in like the world, right? And they start at 4 years old. Her first year there, she was like the best in the class. Wow. And so now we've moved, so we found whatever the best, like the equivalent here. And again, she's the best in the class. So I kind of just knew just by watching. So I guess, I don't know if it's just paying attention. Maybe intuition is just paying attention. I don't know. But that's one area where I feel like I notice something, and then I do the same thing with my son too. I can tell the things that he's into and the things that he's not into, and then kind of foster that, because I want them to be happy, and I don't want them to be forced into crap that isn't a fit for their personality, So I pay a lot of attention to like what they're into, the things that they say, and stuff like that.
So I want to get back to how you use it in business. You've just described like how you use it with your children. And previously we were talking about you using intuition to make decisions, like this makes sense, or this program doesn't make sense, or this offering is exciting. So do you use it with your clients as well?
Like making decisions for my clients?
Or in interactions with them. So for example, I mean, you met Ricky Hansen at Mastermind Talks, right? If you watch her, she is extremely intuitive when face to face with you, or even over Skype. But she's able to just pinpoint and say things where you're going, how the hell did you know that?
Experience with her.
Right? So, and it's amazing. But she doesn't necessarily use her intuition on the back end of her business making decisions on offerings or things like that. So I'm curious if you use intuition on the front end with clients or people you work with, or if you find it more in the back end of decisions on which direction you should go.
Yeah. I think I do use it with my clients as well. And sometimes it's interesting because, especially, when you're working with entrepreneurs and you're coaching them, or even when I'm delivering legal services half the time, there's a lot of coaching, Mm-hmm. And so figuring out what to say, and a lot of it is paying attention, like listening very closely. Also, I like to notice the tone of voice. Like sometimes people are talking about something and they're like, it sounds like a total drag. And other times they sound really, really excited. And so I try to pay attention to that. Like, where are they getting excited and where does it seem like it's a drag, And then asking them questions about that to help them figure out what their intuition is trying to tell them, So I do use it in that way. I also use my intuition to figure out like what to say next, If they present a problem that seems like insurmountable, like I can't do this, and here are all the reasons why, and I want to, I do use my intuition to sort of figure out what to say next, and sometimes I feel like it doesn't really work out. Sometimes I say things to them that I think is like really going to like open up this whole can of worms for them and like really help them to see something, and they're like, nope. No, that ain't right. And I've had that happen where I'm just like, okay, I got that totally wrong. And then I feel like what often happens though is later on, sometimes it's the same day, they'll later email me and be like, I was thinking about, and actually you were totally right. Or sometimes it's months later where like I've worked with someone for 2 days in person, like trying to figure things out. And it's clear to me, this often happens because I work with a lot of lawyers too, who are entrepreneurs, and it happens a lot where it's like they're a lawyer, they obviously hate being a lawyer, but they're scared to death to let it go. Yeah. And so then I will work with them, clear to me, and I try to highlight it for them. I take them through the body compass exercise, like we do all these things together. And it's so funny because I just had one client, it's like 6 months later after we had that meeting where she was like, no. And now she's like, yes, and totally pursuing that. But back then she would like, wasn't it, but sometimes you're just like planting a seed that will grow later on. So I do use it on the front end, but I feel like I've learned how to use it more on the back end than on the front end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that right there is the perfect example of like, she probably felt intuitively that she didn't want to do this, but if you're an attorney, you've at least spent 3 years investing in your education. You've probably spent a shit ton of money doing that. And the cognitive analytical side wouldn't allow you to think of that, really.
Exactly. It's like you can't consider it as an option. And that's usually where most attorneys are at the start when they're thinking about leaving a profession that they're really invested in. So maybe it's just a matter of introducing the idea and letting them get used to it over time, Yeah. So it's interesting. There is one interesting place where I feel like I've used the body compass and then I was like, oh, did it do me wrong? And that was with our move recently. Like I used my intuition to know that I needed to get out of New York where I grew up. I just felt like I'm going to have a lot more balance if I get the hell out of here. I don't know why. It's from home. I have complete control over my life, but for some reason, just the energy of this place, I don't know what it is, but I got to get out of here. So, and I just felt that very strongly for months. So I was like, forget, let's just do it. Let's just go. We were going to buy a house first. And then I was like, actually, that's going to take too long. Let's just get out of here. We'll rent for a little while and then we'll find a house while we're down there. And so we went down like a couple of times to check places out. We found a place that I was madly in love with. Like I couldn't stop thinking about it. Actually, when we were at Mastermind Talks, we had time we were like painting like our, vision for our future, whatever. And I painted the little river that was like outside a house that I wanted to buy. And So then I had to go back down there to visit that area, and my body confidence was just like, no, no, no. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense, you know? And it's so funny because then like all of my friends and some entrepreneurs I know were like building offices in Greensboro, and like there was all these things happening in Greensboro, which was like an hour away from the place that I was looking at. And then I was like, And then one of my employees, her mother lived in Greensboro. She had talked about it because she was visiting all the time. And so I was like, maybe we should go to Greensboro. And my husband's like, are you out of your damn mind? Like, we've already made decisions. Like, and so I'm like, okay, never mind. Maybe we'll look into it when we get down there. And then it was just this feeling that kept cropping up, and I could not get over it. So I talked to my, I was like, now we're like 3 days from when we're supposed to move, right, to this place. And I'm like, this nagging feeling, like, I don't want to be there. It's not the right fit. And I'm like, oh God, I tell my husband he's going to kill me, you know, because I do crap like this all the time because I'm so ruled by my intuition. Not that big, but, you know, changing my mind about stuff or whatever. So I talked to a friend of mine, and I was like, okay, here's the thing. There are literally people at my house right now, like packing up boxes, like packing up all of our stuff. The moving truck's coming tomorrow. And I think we should move to this other city that's like nearby the place we were going to move. And I was like, is that insane? And she, that's not insane. She's like, do it. She's like, just explore it. Like, call a realtor, see if you can find a place there, like a short-term place that you could live for a little while you look for a house or a more permanent place, you know, and just like, if you feel that strongly, just go with it. So then I was like, okay, I get on with her, go back home, get my husband to like go to lunch with me while they're packing up our house. And at lunch, I'm like, so, you know, I'm like, what's the news? And he's just like shaking his head the whole time. He's like, look, if you could find a place 24 hours, I'll consider it. Like, okay. So I'm like, now the challenge is on, you know?
Yeah.
So I found a realtor, and like, next thing you know, then like we found a place, and then we had to like get approved, right? So literally all of our crap is in a moving truck. We're literally about to pull off in like half an hour. We're supposed to be, and then we get the message that, yes, we were approved. It's all sorted. We didn't know where we were going. We were like, are we going to the original place that I had already put a deposit down on and all that stuff, or are we going to this new place? So anyway, we wound up moving here, found the best school ever for our kids, and I really like it here. So wow. It's crazy.
That's devotion to your intuition, because I think if I was faced with the same situation, I'd be like, nah, I'm not going to upset everything that we've already put into place. But that is really impressive that you're able to say, no, I really think we need to go somewhere else.
And by the way, I've never been here. Yeah. Like, I've never been to Greensboro. Oh my gosh. You can imagine what it's like to be married to me, or like to be an employee of mine.
Your husband must be a very...
that thing we said we were doing? We're not doing that.
Yeah. Your husband must be a very patient man.
Extremely patient. Yeah. So see, my intuition did well. I chose wisely. Oh my gosh. But I really did feel like my intuition had led me astray. But I think maybe what happened is that, and I talked to a friend of mine about it, and she was like, well, maybe it's just that your intuition that's telling you that North Carolina was the right place to go, that not necessarily that particular place. And that's where she introduced the idea to me that it's one piece of information. Like, my intuition is saying, come down here, but this particular place that we're supposed to move to and this particular neighborhood, I'm not feeling it, you know? So she's like, use that feeling to give you different information, you know? Yeah. And there were other things that were missing from the neighborhood that I felt like were going to be a disadvantage for my family. So she was like, use it as one piece of information and then use other information as well to like get to the right decision. So it's interesting how that happened, because I'm like, no, my intuition said to move there. I can't be wrong, you know? So sometimes I think you can kind of get devoted to it in a sort of negative way, where you're not, you know, you're getting a different feeling or you're having different information, you're not following it. So yeah, that was an interesting experience, especially for a devotee like myself.
So have you ever noticed any barriers to intuition, like things that cause you not to be able to listen to it or not to be able to tap into it?
If I talk about it too much, like if I talk about a decision too much with too many different people, and especially people that I really trust opinion, then I'm like, no, I should be doing that. This one said I should do this. That one said I should do that. That one is having so much success, I should do whatever he said to do, and then it can get real clouded. And I feel like I can always get back to it, but sometimes it's like, I got to leave it alone, stop talking about it. And I've what's interesting? I noticed that water helps me clear things out. Like if I'm like struggling with a situation where I'm like, woe is me, like I can't figure it out, like everything's a mess, I'll literally go take a bath and then come out with clarity. Like almost always. So if I'm like, everything is a hot mess, I'm like, it's the middle of the day. I've already showered today. I'm going to go get in the tub. So yeah, I don't know what that is, but water helps me to get back to, my intuition.
You're not the only one who's said that. I don't think any other recorded interviews have said that, but I have the same experience. And I have a couple of friends who've mentioned that whenever they're a little bit scattered, they or they can't get clear mentally, they go take a shower and they come out much. It's almost like it's a grounding effect. Like they start out here, like everything's just all over, and then they come out and they're put back together again.
Yeah.
I have the same experience.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I think going for a walk can have a similar experience, but it's just never like something about getting in the shower, and you're just like, you don't have your phone or newspaper or anything else in the shower, you're like.
Or anyone else trying to talk to you at that time, hopefully.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about water. It's powerful.
Yeah. And then where do you think your intuition comes from?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure. I believe that there is a God. So I feel like maybe that was placing these thoughts in my mind, I don't know. I really have no idea. I feel like it's like coming from like my inner self, but is there something beyond that that's placing it there? I have no clue. I really don't know what I believe around that.
Yeah. And do you have any other thoughts on intuition that you want to share with me?
Let's see. I feel like we've covered it all. I would just say, try it, like whenever people say, oh, I can't do that. I'm always like, well, how can you try it on a small scale and just see what happens? Like, should I go to the gym right now or not? Like, try it with less, epic decisions and see what it does for you, where it leads you. And then you can kind of practice using it with bigger decisions as well. I think that's a good way to sort of ease into it and start to get in touch with it.
Cool. Well, you've shared some awesome insights and some great examples. So thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with me.
Thank you for having me. I think this is an interesting topic, so it was a fun discussion.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks again to Rachel for speaking with me today about intuition, and thank you for listening. To find out more about Rachel and her work, go to rodgerscollective.com. That's Rodgers, RODGERS, collective.com. To get updates on new episodes of the Find Your True North podcast, visit www.intuition.today.